Okay.
Well, first I'm going to explain how the program works, and this screen doesn't get any bigger than this, but I don't know if you guys can see this or not, and you're going to have a hard time seeing this line. But this is the degrees before top dead center, starting at 0, working your way up, and this is RPM. So the first line is one thing that no other ignition system, I don't think, sets it up this way. This is when your coil turns on, and you get to determine exactly when your coil turns on. So at low RPM, it doesn't need to be on very long. At higher RPM, because of the speed, you want it on longer, so that's why you've got the curve there. The yellow and the blue and the green are the 3 individual sparks. So it's not a short burst of sparks like some multi-spark type ignitions. It's full sparks just like it normally would be. And you do have the ability, for some reason, if you wanted to, you could turn it off. This over here will show you what sensor you're on. So this screen is for both of your wires grounded. Then it'll show you your rev limiter here and on a dotted line there. You can change it by clicking on that and typing it in, or by dragging this with a mouse anywhere you want to. There's no rev chips. Because an MSD would have a rev chip that you'd switch. We don't use a chip, it's just, it is what it is. Then there's 10 transitions, which means that everywhere there's a black dot is a spot that you could grab with the mouse. It'll do 2 things. First, it tells you what RPM that dot is on, and what degrees of advance it's on, and you have the ability to drag the dot to a point wherever you need it to be. So if you're going to build a curve from scratch, these 3 lines start out flat on the bottom, and then you'll move them where you want them. Or if you're going to change a curve, just change them wherever you want them. Again, same thing with the rev limiter. Then you can either drag the thing back and forth, or you can just punch it in. And then this says there's 3 sparks. Now if you click on here, see your options are 1, 2, and 3. If you wanted to, you could just turn multi-sparking off. If you were going to use, let's say, a stock coil, which would not be capable of multi-sparking anyway, then you could turn that off. I've never, if you wanted to turn it off, I guess you'd have to talk to Power Arc. I don't see a reason. One of the big advantages of this ignition is the fact that it actually can multi-spark. So again, I don't know why you'd want to turn it off, but you could if you want to. Information on the bottom. Well, it's more for the programmer. This will tell you how many cylinders. It's a 4-cylinder. This will tell you if it's fired off a coil or a distributor, because we can use this to fire in a distributor-based system. This will tell you that this rotor takes the signal off the camshaft, and on the 1100, of course, we have to switch it to a crankshaft, whatever you're taking the signal off of. It's set up to run a 2-cylinder style tachometer. Fallback RPM just tells it this for making your adjustments in your curve. Digital sensors, and then it tells you it's for a 4-cycle. Whenever you make a change, you can save it under your own name if you want. Revision 2, revision 3. If you're playing around with this thing, you don't want to wipe out the original one. You could save it and say Joe's crazy idea number 12. And then you can go back later and see what you did. Yeah, you can save it as many times as you want to. What you don't want to do is make a change and accidentally click save and save over the default one. Because if you go out and you do a bunch of testing and you find out, you know what, I think I've gotten so far off track, I just want to start over again. Just download the stock stuff and just do it again. Just do it again, right? You haven't heard anything at all. And then when you're going to program it, then of course you'll click on Program Ignition, and I'll hook it up and I'll show you how to do it. I'll have you change the RPM to 10,000, so if you blow it up, then we'd have on film that you did it, not me.
Yeah, right.
Judge again.
Yeah, this will be used in court later. So the rev limiter right now on the 1000 is at 8,500 RPM. Yours is at 6,500 because that's what we had it set for. So I'm going to show you how to hook it up, if you're cool with that, Dan.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So we have two ends. There's a simple end here that plugs onto the ignition. It goes into an adapter. It does have an external power supply. If you're working on a motorcycle that doesn't have battery power, or an ignition that's still on your kitchen table, then you could just plug this into the wall and get power to run it. And then this just converts it to a USB signal for a laptop computer. So, or if you don't have a laptop, just drive your bike in the kitchen and just do it right in your living room if you want to, you know. So on the bottom, this one has an extra piece on there that's been added so that you do not have to remove the ignition to make changes. We knew we were going to play with yours, so we had the extra piece soldered on. If you want to, you can. You can add it later, but it's a lot better to do it up front. We did one on a race bike where we added it later. He didn't think he wanted to change it, and then he decided he did. I can get this thing on here. So this just goes on here, and then this goes into the computer. And then when we're ready to make changes, then the first thing we'll do is read the serial number and make sure they're talking to each other. So on this one, I'm going to shut this down and then just bring it back up since we made changes. Do you want to save them? No, you do not. Go back in, open it up. Okay, so we go in. I'm going to open the 1000 curve. Okay, there's the curve we want.
That's a default?
That's a default curve. Yeah. Curves are very similar for all engines. I mean, there's sort of a theory of a generic 4-stroke curve.
Did you read the serial number? I couldn't really tell from back here.
Once we'll have to turn power on your bike to power this up. So you can turn your key on. That'll power the ignition, that'll also power this. So just turn your key on. And again, if you didn't have battery, now you see the LED light is on. Mm-hmm. So you know that this thing is hopefully talking to. Let me just turn this so I can see this. So what you'll do is you just go to the help screen. You go to About. This comes up. You'll ask it, would you please read the serial number of Joe's ignition? It should be 7411, and it is. So you know there's communication there. It just read.
Right. Okay.
It just read the serial number.
Okay.
So that's really what you're looking for. Then you can just click OK. Now we know that if we ask to make changes, it's actually going to save the changes on your ignition. Once you download information on that ignition, you do not have the ability to see what's on there. So if you did something goofy and you didn't save it as one of your own personal curves, and you said, oh shoot, I wanted to know what I did there, try again. So if you're going to make a change, the first thing you should do is just change one thing, save as, and then save as whatever version you want.
Okay.
Pick a different color, a different number, we don't really care.
Well, it'd be nice if it could tell you what the curve is set.
It would be.
Yeah, but it's probably going to be a bigger module. You can't
You can pay a lot of money and send it into PowerArc, and they can do it reverse.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah, but it's just easier to. If you save the changes you made before you download it, then you can just go back to that revision.
Because it's on the laptop.
Sure, yeah. Exactly, and look and say what did I download. And then the one thing I want to show you is
So what you're saying is, if you put it down into the bike, you can't pull it back out and put it back on the screen.
That's not without a lot of work.
Okay.
Correct. So.
That was a clear no-no.
Yeah, don't do that.
You'll make that mistake. I've made that mistake. Well, everyone's going to make that mistake where you download it and you're like, wow, what did we do to that second curve? And again, it's just practice. Now these are going to tell you that your sensors are both grounded. So this is the curve.
So the sensors are
sensor 1 and sensor 2 are on a C2, which is all the Gold Wings have. There's a brown wire and a blue wire.
Right.
So sensor 1 is blue, I believe, and the other one is brown.
And that's setting your curves.
That's
which curves you want.
Exactly. But here's what I want you to watch. See where these sparks are. Let me go back. When you hover over a dot, it says what, Joe?
I can't see it.
39 degrees at 3,400 RPM.
All right.
Right? So you know exactly where that is. If you need to move it, you just click on the dot and you just move it. And now
it takes forever with me because I got
dial
dial up.
up. So anywhere that you move these 10 dots, if you need a very specific curve in a certain RPM range because it's supercharged or turbocharged, and it is very important for you to start to retard the timing at a very critical point, then you could take your 10 dots and you could use more dots on that specific curve. You know, here, there doesn't, once it gets to 39, you don't need a dot over here that says 39. It's just this a straight line. Use your dots where it does the engine the most good. And then when you go here and you click on this, these are your 4 different curves. Now watch what happens when I choose the next one down. The coil turn on changes. and your maximum ignition curve changes. You don't generally mess around with the bottom curves anyways. It's under a very low load. It doesn't change that much. When you want to go and find out what your third curve would be, then you go to the third one, and you'll notice that we just set it so it's a little more retarded. And then again, when you go to your, if you forgot to ground either one of your wires, which happens sometimes, it runs in the least aggressive curve. That bike isn't gonna, you couldn't outrun my car with that curve. It's a very, very retarded curve. Most people would never go to the fourth one. But if you had a sidecar with a trailer and you got a bad batch of gas and you're loaded down with stuff, there are some times when in the right kind of hills, you might have to go to your fourth curve just to get home. So on this one, what you could do, even if you're not hooked up to change curves, like you're not right now, you don't have a rotary switch or a map sensor, you could just take those two wires and rip them out if you had to, unground them both, puts you in the least aggressive ignition curve, saves the engine to get home and figure out what happened. So, anyway, not suggesting that's how you unground them, but so anyway, so we're back to
so now what you're doing is you're looking at what your curves are going to be.
correct.
Relative to however you have those grounded.
That's correct.
So
it doesn't mean that it's just because you clicked on curve number 2 and you downloaded, you're downloading all 4 curves.
Right.
You could make a curve. Let's say you said you had daughters. Let's say that you were trying to train someone to ride, and you wanted to make sure that they couldn't exceed 4,000 RPM. You could put a learning curve in there with a very retarded timing and a very low RPM range where they couldn't get themselves in trouble. And we did that on one of the cars. They wanted to be able to have their son drive a car. We set the rev limiter on a 4-speed transmission so that they couldn't go over 60 miles an hour. You couldn't get the RPMs needed to go faster than that.
Kind of like a feeling I had.
That's good for learning, that's good for breaking in engines, that's good for borrowing it to someone, that's good for a couple different applications. So again, you can do whatever you want to.
Toggle switch. If somebody else is on the damn thing, it won't do it.
I have toggle switches on one of my CB750s. So anyway, now what we're going to do is we want to change the rev limiter. Joe wants to blow this bad boy up. So what you're going to do, Joe, is you're going to go on here. I want you to click on that box, type in 10,000, and then hit enter.
Well, I don't know if I'm going to do this.
So just move it over to the box. Now just tap the box. Okay. Yep, you got it.
Oh, that one.
Now type in 10,000.
Can I just do the zeros?
000. Okay, it's at 10,000, right? See how the line moved? You just set. Now you didn't do it to your computer yet. You didn't click on program the ignition. But right now this is set at 10,000. Okay?
Okay.
So what I always do is go over here and make sure. Did you make this one at 10,000? No. That one's
oh right. Huh.
right.
So you've got to change them all, and you've got all that.
Well, because you might have one curve that doesn't have. Let's say if you went with a real retarded curve, you might want that curve to be lower RPM, because that's your limp home mode. Or on a drag racer, you could set that as your launch curve. You could set your RPM to 4,000 because your clutch engages at 4,500, and when you hit a button, that button goes to curve number 2 with a real high rev limiter. Your bike instantly takes off. That's how drag racers launch. So, or that's one way, anyways. All right, and we're going to go to the next one, and we want that one at 10,000 as well. All right, so you're all in. All of your curves are set to 10,000. So if you do decide at some point in time that you want to play with these curves, every single one of yours is at 10,000.
Right.
There isn't anything else that you want to change at this time, correct?
No.
You're happy with the curve, it runs good, you're still working on it?
We're still working.
Okay, so we're ready to go. So let's just go ahead and program the ignition. It says, are you sure? And you say, I am absolutely sure.
There she goes.
Okay, so at this point in time, your bike should rev up to 10,000 RPM before the ignition shuts it off. So at this point, all you can do, you can just unplug it and you're ready to go. Again, the only thing you want to make sure is the LED light is on normally. There you go. Just give it a little wiggle. There you go, and you're done.
So now we start her up.
It's that simple. So what we can do with this, if we want to, is we can just say File, Save As, and then in my files, I will just put Joe version 1 10K, and I'll know that that's a 10,000 rev limit because you and I talk enough. Okay, so I have that saved in my laptop. So if you say, Paul, make me a crazy curve, I'll use your curve.
And you could email him the curve too.
He can, but he needs this.
No,
stuff.
but I mean you could. I mean that's.
And a lot of times what we'll do is between Gary and I is we will export this as a PDF, and then you could print them off the color sheets and you could look at it, because you might say, you know what, I'm having some running problems right around here. I think I want to try something different. It's much easier if you have a printout of all 4 curves sitting on the table. For me, I'm a visual guy. I want to sit down and draw what I think I want. When we made the curve for the Chrysler outboard, no one had ever done a wasted spark 4-cylinder 2-stroke before that we know of. We don't even have software to support it. So what we did is we took a 4-stroke Honda CB750 curve, and then we told it some lies, and we set it up with a curve for this 2-stroke. And we made a curve from scratch. And I went through all 4 different curves, saved them, and we downloaded on it, and it actually worked. It ran. But we didn't know that it ever would. No one that we know of ever tried it before. So that's okay, and if it doesn't run, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Then
Well, this is pretty much how I do things.
So what do you want? But you didn't buy another module to have to do that.
Right.
You didn't buy a box that accepts more chips that you have to pay, or come up with a rev box, or come up with any other external module. Your little module in here is the only module that there is.
Right.
There is no other box to try to zip tie to your bike. So that's it. So now I suggest you go for a ride and tell us.
Okay.
If you come back walking, we'll know you blew it up.
Oh gosh.
Now, you want to put the cover back
Don't
on?
get him started on that.
You probably should pop the cover on
Oh, yeah.
just to keep that molecule of dirt off of the
Yeah.
rear.
Yeah.
And the kit comes with all the
Dog
software
might
and all
pee
the
on the
cables and
sensor,
everything
you know.
that you just
No,
haven't fit.
the cable is something that a dealer, because I'm the distributor trying to set up dealers worldwide that could assist customers. It's $150 for this and the program to do it in all the curves and everything. But if you wanted to, let's say Joe said, "Hey, Paul, I really want to play with this," I could either come down and visit my brother in Indy and meet him or something, or I could mail him this and he could play with it and mail it back. Or is what we're suggesting, and some clubs would buy one. Let's say that the forum wanted to invest in it, then we could have a check-in, check-out library.
That's a good idea.
You found out that didn't work though, did you? The tool loaner thing and all that kind of stuff.
There's got to be a mutual respect.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has to be trusted members that'll carry through with it.
But let's just say that you guys have a group of people in Ohio or in Indiana, or there's a big group out in California. There's no reason why you guys couldn't have a little mini get-together. Anyone that had one say, "Hey, let's meet someplace and let's reprogram our stuff."
Yeah.
Then we would probably want to send that person a curve and have them draw out what they want the curve to be. Actually, I should change what I said there. I could get you the software and the curve ahead of time. You could make the curve, but you can't download it without
Right, okay.
this.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, okay, that's what
So you
make
can
your
still
own
play
curve
with
ahead of
it.
time.
Yeah, there's no such thing as copy protection anymore. You could copy that program in a heartbeat. Or if
You'd
couldn't
copy
do
the
it, you give it to a
program, but
kid and they could do it.
yeah,
go
unless
find
you
a
knew how to make
kindergartner.
that.
Yeah.
This,
I robbed
this
the
is,
bank with a kindergartner.
the software has zero value unless you have that coil and that ignition. So
Oh.
we just want to make it so that it's easy for a customer with a specific application. to
Well, I
do it.
think it's pretty neat that if you can get rid of the single spark, you have it for whatever reason. I mean, I'm not trying to, something failed,
I can't think of a reason
You
why,
can
but there
come
are
up
reasons
with-
why
you
you
can
might
come up-
want. Well, here's
You
one
can come
thing
up
is
with
that,
a coil that was easy accessible. You could get rid of the multiple sparks.
let's just
put it
say
on
that
there.
you wanted to check your RPMs. A lot of the inductive timing lights or inductive tachometers do not read multi-spark because it gets confused. It doesn't know which spark it's supposed to read. It usually multiplies it. So it will show your idle at 5,000 RPM on a Goldwing, or like on the Corvette, it showed 15,000 RPM, and then it would drop to 0, and then it was at 800, and then it was at 4,000. It just didn't know how to calculate it. if you were really trying to set your idle for tuning, turning the multi-spark off would be real easy. Or if you have a digital tack, then take it off the digital tack signal. There is a wire designed specifically for an electric tack. But let's say you don't have an electric tack. You only have the inductive pickup, like the Dynajet dyno that I used. It doesn't have a signal. It doesn't have a thing to clip on.
Well, so there's a problem with regular inductive timing lights too, right?
Can be. The cheaper the timing light, the better the odds are it's going to read accurately.
Oh, really?
A really good, expensive, super accurate, super fast timing light can pick up the 3 sparks.
Oh yeah,
And
right.
it's going to be confused
The
as hell.
super cheesy, $10 one that that most of us probably have. They're so dumb and so slow. It just thinks the 3 sparks is 1.
So it's taking sort of almost like an average, you know.
I have 3 timing lights. I have a really cheesy one, a medium cheesy one, and a pretty nice one. And the one that works the best is the crappy one. It's just not high quality enough to determine that there were really 3 sparks happening.
You brought it?
I did.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Well, so I got the blue and the brown, I guess it is.
They're grounded.
No, they're not grounded.
You want to ground them. No, did you never have them grounded?
No, I've had them grounded. I mean, I've looked at that charge one. One's retarded, and you switch back and forth. Right?
Plug them back in if you can easily ground them. Your red limiter is the same in all your curves. I just want to see what you think with that thing on the most aggressive timing curve.
And that's with it grounded?
With both of them grounded.
Okay, I got my ground wire right here.
This is factory Honda
Yeah.
right there, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's it.
That was their farm and home division.
Actually, that's kind of my contribution to it, because this damn thing's been a wiring nightmare.